Thank you, Bastian. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about retail media. It might not be the main topic of this event, but hopefully it's all on everyone's minds. I'm going to give you some trends, some data. I love insights, as my title might suggest. And I'm also going to talk to you a bit about what you should be thinking about to be successful in a retail media journey. So this is me. I don't need to reintroduce myself. IAB Europe, in case you're not aware, is a trade body or a trade association for the digital advertising and marketing industry. So we represent a range of companies from media owners through to media agencies and media buyers. So everything in between that, from technology companies, data companies that support the ecosystem. So in 2024, the retail media advertising market grew 4 times faster than the total ad market. So at 22% versus 6%. So this is huge. Advertising growth generally is very much linked to the growth of the economy. And I think retail media is a bit of an outlier in that for many reasons, which I'll touch upon. We work with a chief economist at IAB Europe, Daniel Knapp, and he does some very clever work around forecasting and modelling what the advertising market could be worth in future years. And he's done this specifically for retail media for the last couple of years. And his forecasts show that by 2028, retail media in Europe could be worth 31 billion euros. That's about a third, there or thereabouts, of the total digital advertising market. So there's huge potential. When we look at that by market, the UK is the largest, followed by Germany, and then France, Spain, Italy, Netherlands, and Poland. This follows generally the advertising market growth as well, so this is fairly similar. Having said that, the UK is the largest market, Germany second. Still huge growth potentials there for the next few years. Combined annual growth rate, 17.6% for the UK, 15.6% for Germany. Breaking that down into who is taking the most money out of this, I think it's probably no surprise that currently Amazon is the biggest player. But there are some shifts underway that we think over the next few years. So around 2028, Amazon's share of this will be down to about 2/3, and 1/3 of it for the rest of the industry. I just want to talk a little bit about retail media and other media. We think that actually retail media doesn't sit in a silo. It's actually really important and fuels the future of all media. You only have to look at things like Walmart acquiring Vizio, a streaming platform in the US, to see that actually the data, the insights, everything that's happening with retail media is really important to the future of all media and all advertising. Before I go into this, I just want to go back a little bit. I've given you some stats on what's going on with retail media, but I just want to give you a definition of what we actually mean by retail media here at IAB Europe. We did quite a lot of work with our retail media committee members to define what we're actually talking about here and try and get everyone on the same page, because I think we are at risk of everyone talking about this in different ways. So retail media refers to the digital advertising space, retail data assets, and in-store opportunities a retailer or marketplace owns, which is then made available to brands for the execution of advertising campaigns. It could include in-store, off-site, and what we would call on-site, so sponsored products, display on-site, video on-site, etc. It also includes the targeting, optimization, and measurement elements of digital campaigns. So think about retail data being used in other campaigns. Links back to that point before, retail media is linked to the future of all media. So where is the money actually coming from? Where is it? New growth, new money? We did an attitudes to retail media survey last year. We hope this is going to become an annual piece. And we found that actually the majority of budgets, media budgets, shifting into retail media tend to be performance or brand advertising. So we're not necessarily looking at new budgets, but advertisers are looking at ways to shift their current budgets into retail media. So that's really important to bear in mind as I talk through the next few slides in terms of how you build out your retail media strategy. This is a quote from Keith Bryan. He's the former president of Best Buy Ads in the US and founder and CEO of Coliseum Strategy. He says that retailers are media companies in denial. 2025 is the year which many of these will finally come out of denial. I think that's quite a bold statement. It's a fair assumption, but I think it's quite bold in terms of retailers being media companies. I'm sure lots of them already think of themselves as such, but some are probably still on their journey. So we think the entire industry has a role to play here for everyone to come out of denial. The retailers, their RMNs, the commerce players, their commerce media networks, the ad tech companies that support the ecosystem, the brands that are funding the ecosystem, the industry bodies, so I count myself there, and the media agencies that are working with their brands. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to talk through 5 things that we think are really important for unlocking retail media success. First one, retail plus media. So retailers really have to get the balance right between being a retailer and a media company. It's a real critical balance. You've got to think about things like internal organization structures. Is it a separate media business? Is it integrated? The resources that are going to support that, C-level sign-off and buy-in on this, all really important considerations. What does this look like in practice on a day-to-day? So the retail side of the retail business will be grappling with things like joint business plans, JBPs, commercial insights, their sales calendars, their promotional windows. Whilst the media side of the business are thinking about things like media planning, audiences, how are they going to set up measurement, what are their KPIs going to look like, incremental sales, share of voice, etc. There's so many different moving parts that as a retailer looking to become a serious media player, you need to think about these 2 things and how they're going to work together. Secondly, I know we're at an e-commerce event, but I do think in-store is a really critical part to retail media, to the future of retail media. This is some data from Andrew Lipsman. He says that the physical store is the next major media channel. So if you look here at the data that we've got, the share of time spent on in-store, 5%. The ad spend, less than 1%. So that's about, Andrew calculates, a $20 billion gap. So I think we just need to bear this in mind when we're building out retail media. If we have a store environment, if we have physical brick and mortar as part of our portfolio, let's build it into the strategy. And actually, all in-store media is retail media, we believe. So whether they are digital or not, they're all in-store media. So that could be things like end caps, your smart trolleys, fridges or coolers, surfaces at the exterior of the store. There's so much opportunity there. And it's not forgetting experiential media. So things like demos, DIY stations in store, we think probably, a key differentiator. People can come and they can actually experience, touch, feel a product, which is really, really important. We like to think of the store in zones. So when you're thinking about your store, think and how you're planning to allocate media, think of it in zones. And so there's 5 zones. You've got exterior, entrance, and anything out of a category, checkout zones, kind of the middle of the store, your in aisles, and then zone 5 would be anything other that doesn't fit into the previous 4. And try and not over hyper personalize things in store. I think mass media is the key here. Audiences, reaching people at scale, getting people when they're in that purchase moment is really important. Hyper personalization doesn't necessarily need to be top of mind there. Going back to the kind of more on-site digital-led stuff, don't ignore on-site search. This is some more data from Andrew Lipsman, who runs a stat called Media Ads and Commerce, which is a really useful thing to sign up for if you're not signed up. When we look at where the budgets are coming from, remember performance, brand, he found that the brand's next retail media dollar is most likely to be spent on search. So I think when brands at the moment are thinking about retail media, I think they're thinking on-site search, on-site display are really top of mind. So let's get this right. I think that's really important. It's still a source of untapped revenue and untapped monetization for a lot of retail media networks. This is perhaps not the easiest thing to read, but if you look at, this is Walmart Connect. So they actually, in June 2022, implemented a second price auction and search algorithm on their RMN. And you can see that led to an improvement in their ROAS, so the return on ad spend figures, but also in their CPCs. So obviously back when they first, or near when they first launched in 2021, their CPCs were fairly high. They did see a drop. They did some improvements, and their CPCs have been rising. So I think the message here is if you can get on-site search right, optimized correctly, it's still a really good source of revenue, and probably the one thing you want to get right first. Fourth thing is off-site is key to the future of retail media. It's key to growth. On-site, as I said, still lots of opportunity, lots to do there, but there is going to be a ceiling at some point in terms of, there's only so many ads you can put on a retail site, on a page, without annoying the user. So we think the kind of future growth is really going to come from those off-site opportunities. So anything a retailer does off-site, so it might be working with social platforms, it might be working with streaming services to activate audiences or media on those opportunities. So more data. By 2028, off-site is probably going to be around 1/3 of total retail media revenue. And if you look at the kind of compound annual growth rate between kind of now and then, 75% is going to come from off-site. Why is that? the scale is really going to come from those open platforms, as I just said, working with those streaming services or those social platforms, or even those DSP partners that have access to a wider variety of inventory. And it's because each has what the other needs. So the retailers or the retail media networks really want to access that premium content that publishers often possess, or their audiences. And while the publishers or the streaming partners want access to the really valuable retail first-party data that RMNs possess, that the proximity to the point of sale, the measurability, the closed loop. So I think we're going to see a lot more happening in terms of partnerships and off-site opportunities over the coming years. And the fifth thing is, I'm sure you've heard a lot about ROAS. I think, or we think at IAB Europe, ROAS is a really good, solid foundation metric. But I think for retail media to, grow up, professionalize, we need to move a little bit beyond ROAS. We say that measurement needs to grow up. So we hear a lot about other insights, incrementality. These are going to be really important things that if you're running a retail media network over the next few years, your brands, your agency partners are probably going to start asking you about if you want to move beyond the kind of sponsor product into the more upper funnel techniques. And it's no secret, I don't think, that actually the retail media networks tend to perform better than other media channels. So, and this can be up to 7 times better, actually. If you look here at kind of your social paid media, return on ad spend tends to be, this is an average, $58. You've got one RMN here that's like nearly $3. So it's going to be really important. So, in summary, I'll just build back on what I've said. Retail plus media. There is a duality between them. There's a synergy. And you don't want to ignore one or the other because it will weaken the other. In-store, retail media, combining things like experiential, digitizing where you can, as I said, focusing more on the scale and the audience rather than hyper-personalization. This is a bold statement. The lack of optimization of on-site search should be treated as an existential threat. Just, optimize your on-site search, get it right, make that work. It's a really big source of untapped revenue. Off-site, going beyond programmatic into those partnerships, those collaborations. Like I said, thinking about where your brands will find value. And finally, as I said, insights, incrementality, the new ROAS. Think about what your measurement roadmap looks like. How are you going to deliver those more advanced insights that your brands might start asking for in the coming months or couple of years? Thank you very much.
Thank you for presentation. IB is like always source of the research for us. And you mentioned incrementality, which is a really hot topic, I would say, especially with our clients and publicists. But how you will tap into the incrementality itself? Because for now, not many retailers will provide enough data for it. I think so far, like Amazon more or less can do this, but like we will take other big retailers like Reve and whatever you will name. Like we cannot how to approach incrementality basically. Like one of the ways, of course, you can see your own numbers, your own performance, and check with the market numbers and are you like with the market growth, but how to like tap into what are the like next steps basically to get this information since retailers are not really up to share data.
I think it's a great question. I think that is one of the hurdles we face as an industry, is getting enough reliable data to make things like incrementality useful metrics. We're working on, at the moment in IAB Europe, some guidelines for incrementality sales measurement. So it's worth keeping an eye out for those. They should be out in the summer. And that will hopefully serve as a kind of resource for both brands and retailers, but brands to discuss with retailers how they can work with them to get those incrementality insights. I think it takes an industry association to perhaps put a platform out there for people to have those conversations, because you're right, otherwise there's not always the incentive for that to happen. So hopefully that will help. I don't have many more answers for you right now, other than to keep saying how important it is to move beyond ROAS and yeah.
You mentioned that offsite retail media is key to growth, particularly through partnerships. So how can you actually put that into place and make it happen? And what are the best practices for brands to leverage offsite channels while maintaining strong measurement and ROAS and incrementality?
That feels like two questions in one. So I'll do the first bit first. So I think if you're thinking about your offsite strategy, think about who your customers are and what value can those insights on those customers add to other players in the media ecosystem. So, do I know where my customers or when my customers, buy their shopping? Is that going to be useful for a streaming platform who is trying to deliver content? You think about where you're best placed to do that. Think strategically about those partnerships, because as I said before, you're likely to have data that those partners want, and vice versa, those partners are going to have something you want. So I think it's more being strategic about who you are, who your customers are, what insights you have, and how that can add value to the ecosystem, and where. Can you remind me the second part of the question?
The second part was like, how can you leverage offsite channels while maintaining strong measurement and ROAS and incrementality?
I think that comes incrementality. I think offsite is going to be a very difficult, a very high bar to get to. So I think we should try and remain realistic in terms of what's feasible. I think offsite measurement capabilities are there. I know RMNs, CMNs are building those and are keen to make sure they deliver useful insights back to their brands and their agencies that they're working with. So I would say have those conversations with the retailers and the RMNs that you're working with. That those which insights you need. Is it that you just need to know which audiences you reached and which ones delivered a sale, or do you really need to know more beyond that? Think about what insights you want and for what purpose. Because for sure RMNs have lots of data and can probably deliver you lots of data, but it has to be useful for something, right?